progressives continue to tell me it doesn't exist. In fact, the mere mention of Agenda 21 causes them to lose their collectivist mind. But here in my hand, I have one of several reports that sit on my desk on the issue, and it is a UN report, 112 pages long, all about Canada and the United Nations, program called Agenda 21. Did a Google search on the Government of Canada website. These are just some of the results from the last year on Agenda 21, because departments continue to write reports and talk about how they are implementing it. This is a very real issue that plays out across the country, in fact, around the world. Dr. Elena Johnson has been writing on this issue in places like Canada Free Press. She's also a best-selling author on Agenda 21 and UN environmental policy. She joins us now from our studio in Washington, D.C. Dr. Johnson, let's start there. You write in a recent piece about how you've been warned as well. Don't talk about Agenda 21, call it something else because, well, it's not real, or people claim it's not real. This is a very real issue that involves a global idea for local control, right?
Absolutely, which started officially in 1992 when it was signed in Rio by 178 countries, and they have gradually and stealthily introduced it at the local level with actual taxpayer dollars disguised as grants from HUD, for example, or from the Department of Energy.
All right, so in your country you've got HUD doing this. In our country we have everything from Environment Canada to forestry management. And just the report I have in my hand talks about agriculture, atmosphere, biodiversity, freshwater, land management, which is a very real issue. It's put its tentacles into everything. Now, a little while ago, you were writing about a group called 750. It's a regional plan in Florida to try and deal with land management. And in Canada, there's a lot of different local examples, such as Imagine Calgary. Imagine Calgary is all about bringing in Agenda 21 type sustainable development ideas. Let's make our city, our town, fit the sustainable development idea. You've looked into what this means in terms of housing choices for people in the future. What are we looking at in the future if people don't fight back?
Well, they call it sustainable urbanism, and they've actually divided the United States into 11 regions, and this particular one encompasses Florida, and it actually takes people's property either under eminent domain or some kind of protection, environmental protection, and it's moving people into these micro dwellings. They call them stack and pack. They're 200 square feet, and they have already been implemented in places like California, and we even have them here in D.C. They're called alley pods. In California, they are stacked 9 stories high. There's no elevator. There are just stairs. There are no parking places because cars are discouraged. And they rent from anywhere from $600 to $900 a month.
These are sometimes referred to as apartments, and that's the extreme example. But what about for a family that wants to live out in the suburbs, have a nice house, nice yard for the kids and the dog? Is that under threat if this type of land management development goes forward?
Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, here in Fairfax County in Northern Virginia, where I live, there is a proposal to install these pods in suburbia in between people's homes. And, of course, there's a pushback from the population, but I'm not sure how successful they're going to be. Obviously, in other parts of the country, although they've been fought off, they lost. So hopefully will prevail, but we're not sure. I cannot imagine what's going to happen.
You've covered this north to south in the United States. How do you fight back? You organize?
We've organized. We have groups across the country, and we've won some battles and we've lost some battles. And right now we're organized to fight in Fairfax County. We do not want these dwellings because they're going to turn our suburbia into slums. And I think that's the intent.
The intent is to try and destroy something that they don't like to begin with. my kids get this from some of their geography teachers, let's put it that way.
Become the popularized expression for Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is the 1992 United Nations Rio Declaration on the Environment and Development.
It is the agenda for the 21st century you're living in today. For a brave new world where everything that you cherished and held true will no longer exist.
Agenda 21 defines itself as the comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations systems.
It also elevates nature above man. And it contains something called the precautionary principle, where basically you're guilty until you're proven innocent.
Sustainable development is the philosophy designed to bring human beings across the globe under the full control of a narrow human elite.
It's a 40-chapter document to basically control the world. It's based entirely on socialist control mechanisms.
Sustainable developers have designed a global movement coordinated through a global to local action plan to create world government in accordance with certain objectives. These objectives include an end to national sovereignty, the abolition of private property, the restructure of the family unit, and increasing limitations and restrictions on mobility and individual opportunity.
The green goal includes the listings of what's not sustainable. A couple of the examples include private property.
728 lists fossil fuels.
Golf courses and ski lodges are not.
Consumerism.
Irrigation is not sustainable.
Paved roads.
Commercial agriculture.
Herbicides, pesticides. Elsewhere, it lists farmlands, pastures, grazing of livestock,
and the family unit. The focus of sustainable development is the abolition of private property, societal undermining of the family, and abandonment of the constitutional protection of unalienable rights as described in the Declaration of Independence. You see, I sat on the Santa Cruz Agenda 21 committees. Now, this was a lot of crazy ideas. This was back in the mid-90s. Crazy ideas I heard. Mother Earth's surface wasn't to be scratched. Human beings were to be concentrated into human settlement zones. Educational systems were to focus on the environment as the central organizing principle. All aspects of life were covered. Well, I went to these committees at the request of some people who told me that I needed to understand what was going on, and I came back and I said, this is craziness. This is so silly. It has no chance of having any effect on our society. Well, I was wrong.
The United States government's support for Sustainable Development Agenda 21 is very clear. In 1992, while the Rio Conference was going on, George Bush, then president, was there where he executed the Agenda 21 protocols on behalf of the United States and brought it back to Washington, D.C. Within a year, Bill Clinton, by executive order, no congressional review, established the President's Council for Sustainable Development. In Santa Cruz, we've got a 2-lane freeway system. We need 4, but what we're getting is hundreds of millions of dollars of federal money to take a dilapidated rail line that Southern Pacific wants to put in the hands of somebody else so that a commuter line can be built along the railroad track. That'll be followed by 14-story buildings where people will live and stack them and pack them units, where developers or so-called sustainable developers will build these high rises with federal dollars. In fact, Santa Cruz has received a $300 million federal grant to build the first 3,000 of these stack them and pack them units. The County Board of Supervisors has said, if you are a sustainable developer, you're immune from any construction defect liability. It's a partnership between selected developers building this new world order and the government using the American taxpayer dollars in order to do it. This is a map of the Wildlands Project. To explain the map, the red are areas that are to be off limits to human beings. No resource development, no human activity. If you live there, you won't. The yellow areas are the areas for major control of all human activity. If you live there, you won't. The black areas, the black dots, are the smart growth zones. That's where human beings are to be stacked and packed in small living units along rail tracks. The smart growth program ultimately has jobs assigned and children cared for by the state.
The question has been asked many times how the people who are perpetrating these things expect to do this and make it last. The answer to that is that you steal a generation of children and you indoctrinate them so that they accept these ideas and they become global citizens in becoming global village.
UNESCO came out and declared 2005 to 2015 the decade of education for sustainable development. But they go on to say that it will encompass the 40 chapters of Agenda 21. That is your federal national curriculum. The entire purpose of second grade social studies is to transfer loyalty from the family to the government and teach them about sustainable economic consumption. Students construct their own understandings of reality and realize that objective reality is not knowable. So why bother? The truth is, the truth, which keep men free, is being suppressed in order to prop up the attitude training agenda. And it moves on. This is our new math called connected mathematics. Standard 3 tells us that students learn that mathematics is man-made, that it is arbitrary, and good solutions are arrived at by consensus. Most of us assume 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4. You're wrong. We might reach a new consensus. How well does it work? Well, they tell you in the teacher's guide in the back, it tells us that because the curriculum doesn't emphasize arithmetic computations done by hand, some students may not do as well on tests assessing computational skills. We believe such a trade-off in the favor of CMP is very much to the student's advantage in the world of work. Our children are mathematically illiterate on purpose. How do I know on purpose? Why isn't this just a basic bad idea? Because the Sustainable Development Plan tells us so. Generally, more highly educated people who have higher incomes consume more resources than poorly educated people who tend to have lower incomes. In this case, more education increases the threat to sustainability. Charlotte Iserby, I owe you an apology. I did not believe for the longest time it was a deliberate dumbing down. I thought that dumbing down was a natural consequence of a bad idea. Folks, it's deliberate. It's deliberate.
The sustainable globalist goal is the orchestration of a planned fall of American principles, values, and lifestyles. The effect on the average American will be devastating. With modernizing technology, the ordinary person will live without independence, privacy, or substantive rights.
Another press conference that I attended was the ICLAI group, the International Committee for Local Environmental Initiatives. It helps in the implementation of Agenda 21 in all of our local communities. And one of the speakers was Harvey Reuven, who happens to be the vice chair of ICLAI. And I asked him about the correlative rights that Americans derive from the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And that, of course, is your individual liberties, your private property, your freedom of speech. I asked about it clashing with Agenda 21. And you know what his response was? Individual rights must take a backseat to the culture.
This is the wish list in documents for Agenda 21 operating through the United Nations. An end to national sovereignty, all justified by saving the world, by the way. An end to national sovereignty, State planning and management of all land resources, ecosystems, deserts, forests, mountains, oceans and fresh water. Agriculture, rural development, biotechnology and ensuring equity equals slavery. The state is to define the role of business and financial resources. Abolition of private property is not sustainable, they say. Here we go again. How many times has this come up? Restructuring the family unit, children to be raised by the state, people told, this is what Aldous Huxley said in Brave New World, people told what their job will be, major restrictions on movement, creation of human settlement zones, I'll get to them in a minute, mass resettlement as people are forced to vacate land where they live for reasons I'm coming to, dumbing down education achieved a long time ago, mass global depopulation in pursuit of all of the above. And what they're doing to hide it is they're setting Agenda 21 organizations up in all local communities all over the world, America, Britain, all over the place, and they're giving the impression that each of these is basically an independent local community initiative when it's all being orchestrated through this organization, through the United Nations, called Local Governments for Sustainability. So when I came across all this stuff, I thought I'll have a look at the Isle of Wight, a few miles by a few miles, and I found that the Isle of Wight had joined Agenda 21 in November 2000. And it says on the Agenda 21 Isle of Wight website that it was developed and written in partnership with the people of the Isle of Wight and reflects their vision for the future of the island. Ever since I saw that, I have been asking everyone I meet on the Isle of Wight, have you ever heard of Agenda 21? No mate, no mate, no mate, nobody's heard of it. And yet, it was the people, this is going on all over the world. And they openly talk in some of these organizations connected to it about the post-democratic, post-industrial world, which is basically symbolized in so many movies recently that are putting this stuff in. Now, Zbigniew Brzezinski, big mentor of Barack Obama, one of the demo cons, he was the national security advisor to Jimmy Carter, and he wrote in another of his prophetic books, because he knows what's coming, called America's Role in the Technotronic Era, 1970, the Technotronic era involves the gradual appearance of a more controlled society. Such a society would be dominated by an elite unrestrained by traditional values. Soon it will be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen and maintain up-to-date complete files containing even the most personal information about the citizen. These files will be subject to instantaneous retrieval by the authorities. 1970 he wrote that. Now, we've had a technocracy which is defined as government by technicians, specifically management of society by technical experts, including bankers, by the way, that includes. And look at what we've now got in Italy. We have, in one of the biggest economies and major countries of Europe, we have a government with not one elected official in it, headed by this guy, Mario Monti. And we had a situation in Greece where we had this guy, Lucas Papademos, as a banker, leader of the country, never seen a ballot box in his life. Lines are bloody good lookers, ain't they? Hey? I blame the inbreeding myself. This is Brzezinski, comes from the planet Zog. And this is David Rockefeller. Now, they co-founded the Trilateral Commission, one of those organizations in that Bilderberg Council on Foreign Relations network with the Club of Rome that I've shown. And it just so happens that Mario Monti, before he became unelected leader of Italy, was the European head of the Trilateral Commission, and Lucas Papademos was a member of it. This is the first step to justifying problems, not least financial, to take away even the right of people to choose their own government, rubbish as most of them are anyway, but at least we've got a right to, at least in theory, choose it, but no choice at all. Bringing the technocrats in, this is absolutely in line with Agenda 21.